Welcome to this presentation on the top business trends for 2021. My name is Janine Barron. My business is Regeneration Business Mentoring, and I'm an ethical business pioneer. More about that soon. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to my number one client. The purpose of everything I do in my personal and business life is because of this client. Because this is the land that my great-grandkids will inherit for their great-grandchildren. And that's thinking 7 generations ahead, which is something I believe we all need to be doing. Now, let's just to clear up the term regenerative business mentor. Now, there's two different ways to look at it. The first is where you're looking at restoring something that's been damaged or lost. And this is something most small businesses will experience at some point. The great news is you can re-emerge from the ashes, and which is why I love to use the phoenix as my business logo. And I have personally re-emerged from the ashes many times. And that is what makes me such a great mentor, is my fabulous failures as well as my incredible successes. So re-emerging from the ashes is one way you regenerate. The preferred way is the second way, which is when things are already going quite well or reasonably well, or you're enjoying what you're doing, but you could do with more of it. That's when you make a proactive choice to work with a business mentor or a business coach to really go back into the foundations of your product, of what you're creating in your business, and making it better so that it can be more successful. So there's just nothing like having an outside opinion. I've personally had a mentor for 10 years and I don't know what I would have really done without them, especially on days when I was freaking out. So I love mentoring now. When I sold my last company 2 years ago, I accidentally fell into mentoring because people just sought my advice. I was seen as a successful businesswoman. It's a badge I'm very proud to wear. And now I just get immense joy from helping other businesses, and it's also how I make a bigger impact in the world. So when we go back to my number one client here, I can make more of an impact by not just having my own business, but by helping multiple businesses make a big impact in the world. So that's my starting point. That's the reason I get up and work. I just want to give you a bit of a visual on regeneration. It's a term that actually came from farming. But as early as the 1960s, farmers were seeing, as a result of all the pesticides being used after World War II, which, for those who don't know, pesticides were the first chemical warfare, but then they noticed there was no insects on the farm. So they turned it into a product and kept marketing it as a great way to farm. That's the short version. So, but farmers were seeing this immense degradation in land and then a reliance on fertilizers to just get crops going. So, and a whole industry has boomed from that. But there's enough farmers that kind of went no more. So rather than being in the domain of hippiedom or alternative farming scenes, as this particular farm up the top here in Australia I'm showing you was, where this guy Charles, his neighbours just basically didn't even want to talk to him. They thought he was nuts. Look what he did to his land. He was able to regenerate his property, and by bringing in and nurturing the bird life and the insects, he was able to have a more sustainable crop as his own farmer. He wrote an amazing book, Charles Massey, The Call of the Reed Warbler, if you're interested. Down the bottom here, we've got a farm in Sussex in the UK, actually connected to my family, I'm proud to say. Surrounding them is traditional farming. That's how it looks. But they have an agroforestry property. It's been going for 25 years. And it's an extraordinary story of resilience and trusting in looking at the signs in nature and using trees and rotating planting. There's a whole crop rotation science with agroforestry. And they're creating an amazing, beautiful community of people living there as well. So extraordinary stuff. And here's the other part of regeneration, of course, which is, it's not just about the land, it's about the people. It's about you and me. It's about us, how we live and show up in this world. And this was a site in America where, like a lot of these old sites that were run down, a developer was looking at buying and putting up units. Now, the community got together and said, well, that's not what we want. So as you can see, they had volunteer days. They had sessions where they all talked about what they wanted. They all got involved and they raised funds and they created this amazing community space, which is now a vibrant community hub in the middle of the town. So it's a great example of people getting together and saying, we want to control the life around us and what our environment looks like, and what an amazing lesson to show kids, and what a legacy. So the word regeneration, which I've borrowed for business mentoring, which is also used a lot in the corporate world, but it's not really that well known in small business, which is a great passion of mine. Wanting to bring that philosophy into the space of how we can look at regenerating ourselves and our businesses. And to do that, we need to get creative and innovative. So it's exciting stuff. How do I know what the trends are? Yes, we are getting to the point of the presentation, which is what are the top 7 business trends? And I say they're for 2021, but they're actually for the whole decade. So hang in there. This is how I know. I've always been an innovator. I'm the person you want at the start of a business. I always am the one with the big ideas. Often people will think I'm a little bit nuts, but any emerging ideas that I'm involved with tend to become normal eventually. So what you're looking at the top here is a baby carrier that my friend Suzanne and I invented in 1998 upon the birth of my second child. It was my first business. It came out of a need, and people thought we were crazy. I can still see the faces of, because basically this is like a 5-foot long piece of fabric, and we looked to Indigenous women is what we did, and we said, look what they're doing. They've got this fabric, and what if we just created a modern product out of that? As I say, I can still see people's faces thinking we were nuts. But we were very lucky. This is 10 years before social media, remember. We had the prenatal wards, premature babies being looked after. The nurses there just jumped on this, and then the chiropractors jumped on it, and then the physios jumped on it, and then before we knew, we'd built a whole brand. It was called Hugabub. It's still called Hugabub, very successful company, but it's been copied many, many times. So if you're a parent in this room, you may well have one of these products, and nice to meet you. Suzanne, Shahar and myself invented that product. The next thing we invented was, again, it's a bit normal now, is retreats for pregnancy. We took corporate women who were busy women who were ending up having cesareans because they just weren't focused on their bodies and themselves. We took them up to Byron Bay, this amazing town in Australia, very well-known tourist place, and hippiedom and lots of amazing, and we taught them about home birth and just natural birth and having a doula and getting supported. And again, the term doula now is normal, but it wasn't. No one had ever heard of it those days. And we had some incredible outcomes of people shifting their whole worlds, and that's a whole nother presentation. But again, pioneering an idea that had never existed before, just having an idea and following it through and creating a business out of it. That one I sold 2 years into it because I realized I was too busy and had another business on the go. This is home IT support that I did with my husband, and this went for 20 years, another very successful business, mostly run by my husband. I just had this mad idea one day because we saw people carting computers into the shops, including ourselves, and we thought, this is crazy. What if we went into people's homes? And no one had ever done this before. So he went out to workplaces and homes, and it just transformed IT support. And of course, that's quite a normal thing now. They're 3 businesses that we've sold that I was ahead of the curve. But the one I'm most known for would be Nature's Child, where we were one of the first 3 businesses in the world. There was Green Baby in the UK, and I always forget the name of the American one. But in the middle of the .com crash, we built a website and created organic baby products. So over the next 18 years, we established supply chains, completely ethical, fair trade supply chains, reusable nappies, reusable face wipes, reusable breast pads. We made skincare that was certified organic, put it in cardboard and glass containers because we were looking at the concept of cradle to grave. I don't know if you've heard that, but the idea is when you make a product, knowing what's going to happen during its life and at the end of its life cycle, so that we're 100% responsible for no waste. So that was an extraordinary business. We pioneered that, and of course, that's been replicated many, many times. So like you say, I'm a starter, I'm a pioneer, and that's why today when I talk about emerging trends, I'm used to being ahead of a curve. That's the space I live in. So you're probably wondering what dinosaurs are doing on the screen, but I just want to have a brief, I am also a historian and a philosopher, so I would like to just give you a very short science lesson in time, super short. It's not very scientific at all, actually. It's just saying, time is something we've been growing up with, is a very linear concept. So you have this past, present, future, that we're always going somewhere, always going in a straight line. And we've associated the idea of progress with going forward. Okay, so even something like this dinosaur timeline or looking at an annual profit chart, if it's not going up, it's problematic. So all our focus is on up, things getting more expensive, making more and more profit. It's a sense of progress. It's only linear. Now, of course, we want to make profit and make good money. I'm not saying we're not going to do that, but what if we looked at time a bit differently? And lately you would have been noticing that a lot of diagrams have gone from this kind of linear line-based model to this circular model, because we're starting to sort of go, this kind of idea of just only going forward and not looking back is not working. And it's something Indigenous societies have always told us. And so you get this idea of the circular economy developing, where companies are now, as part of their CSR, the corporate social responsibility, are taking responsibility for what actually happens to resources. You know, if we're going to use something, what happens at the end of its life. But I'll just bring attention briefly to this guy, Thomas Berry, who was a religious academic, and he described our current era as the ecozoic era, if you want to look that up. It's quite fascinating. And, you know, I believe it too, that I think this is the time in history. Everyone's going to look back at 2020 and go, so what did they do for the next 10 years? During the pandemic, there was this collapse of a whole bunch of structures. But instead of people collapsing, people came together, and this incredible collaboration with ourselves and with nature. And that's going to lead us now into the emerging trends. So I just wanted to give you that very brief. And just quickly, as I said, look, this is Indigenous people have been trying to talk to us for years going, time is circular. It's not linear. So this is why you start to hear these terms now adopted at the corporate level about social responsibility and circular economies, which is a really amazing, super exciting stuff. So as we go into the 7 impacts, I want you to ask yourself one of these 2 questions. Do you love your business as it is and you just need more of that? So is your issue just a marketing need? Okay, one of my other brilliances. Or do you actually need one of these 3 aspects of a new business? Number 1, close what you're doing. It's not serving you, it's not giving you joy, and start something new. That's option 1. And there could be some great inspiration in here today that could really help you think that is actually viable. Number 2 is, I like my business, I can see the value in it, but I'm not able to communicate to people that value. So perhaps it's the model, perhaps it's requiring way too much hard work. Perhaps it's taxing on your health and your family. So perhaps we need to relook at the model. And that's what people did very, very well in 2020, where you had restaurants go one day from having people sitting at tables to delivering takeaways. And the people who did that really well already had some kind of digital communication in place where they were able to let people know what they were doing. But the people showed leadership, those business owners, and they got onto it fast. And they not only succeeded, some of them actually, well, some of them are just getting by with that model, let's face it, but some thrived. The third way to look at having a new business is having a total new paradigm. And that is classically what I do with a lot of business owners, where we sit down and it's just like, okay, how else could this look? What haven't I thought of? How do we move forward on this? And you do your strategic planning and your visioning around a new way of thinking about what you're doing. And that is really exciting stuff, as you can probably start to see. This is the space I live in. I spend many hours a day in research and reading, so I'm always ahead of what's going on. So here are the 7 business trends. Okay, we're going to go through them in detail, but this is just a snapshot. Nature is the big one. It's all you heard about all last year, and you are not going to stop hearing about it. Okay, and it's going to go way beyond watching BBC on a Friday night, Monty's Gardening. It is skyrocketing in terms of the potential for your business. So we're going to go through some ideas for that. Collaboration, I spoke about that at the beginning, where the way people collaborated in lockdown is not only going to not change, that is going to increase exponentially. So looking at your business systems and how ready are you to collaborate. We'll go through purpose-led business. It's like the public have just had enough. In fact, we've all had enough. We are the public. We want to know why people are doing things, what the story is, and how that connects us and fills a need in us. So this is huge. If you're not doing that already, as you can tell, I'm a purpose-led business. It's all I've ever done. So very, very comfortable space for me. Getting your tech in order. Looking at your supply chains. And when I say supply chains, you might think I don't have a supply chain. Every business has a supply chain, even if it's just one person in a service industry. And so it's really not hiding that anymore and bringing that story out of your supply chain. this is going to be huge. You're going to be seeing this in marketing everywhere. So instead of waiting for a big marketing budget that, you know, some company has to deliver, I'm saying you can do this yourself. Knowledge is huge. Courses is going to increase exponentially. So looking at what you know now, and perhaps there's a new aspect of your business. So if you're a photographer, can you teach photography? You might say, I don't want to do that. But it's more the point that you could create an evergreen product that was online that people bought when you were sleeping, and that creates a new income stream for your business. So just thinking about what you know, anything from being a solicitor to being a photographer to being a travel agent, what is it that you know really, really well? Okay, and hopefully you're just dropping some ideas down already. And of course, leadership, it's all about leadership. And that's the space I tend to work with leaders, people who want to be a leader, who are leaders, because it takes leadership of a new vision and a new philosophical direction to get anywhere. So let's dive in. Number one, nature. So we talked earlier about time being circular rather than linear. And what that means is that if you take a look at nature, if you just go out to your garden, if you look at the roots of a tree, you know, what we know now is that everything is connected. We're going to see a photo soon of some mushrooms, and the mushrooms are called the internet of the earth. They've understood now in the practice of mycology that actually mushrooms will underground communicate with every living thing and keeping everything going, and they have this incredible function in the natural world. So for us as a business, what is our ultimate connector? If we were to look to nature, it's actually in the literature, it's called a living systems approach, and it's how organizations can actually utilize everyone in a better way, in a more fulfilling way. Just to go to the next point, something super duper practical. Everyone in this room should be looking at energy efficiency, and there has been leadership set both by the British government and your local council. Just type into Google under your if it's Somerset Council or whatever council it is, just write carbon reduction business grants, and you'll see that there's between 500 and 1,000 available right now. So depending on if you have a facility, you are eligible right now for that if you haven't done it already. So you'll see there's a bit of crossover today. So like that plugs into great leadership, which is point number 7. I'm just going to do some highlights of some industries. And if you're in any of these industries, I do invite you to book a one-to-one with me, and we can dive much deeper than this. But food producers, you've got to tell us your story. Tell us who your suppliers are, where your ingredients are coming from. If you're not already aiming your product at a certain diet, you need to be, okay? Whether it's vegan, paleo, keto, whatever it is, plant-based is just huge. There's not enough meat to go around in the world. It's that simple. It's not just about choosing whether to eat meat or not. It's just 20 years ago, the United Nations said that's it. You've got to stop eating so much meat. So business is catching up, and this is booming. You've probably seen it in your supermarkets already. So looking at, how can you utilize, what relationship, if you've got a mayonnaise product or an oil product or a chocolate product, how can that work with a plant-based food? How can you connect the dots on what's trendy and how your product fits into that? What people who's writing the books, who's writing recipes, how can you get your product in front of those people? Give us your supply chain story. If you've got an ingredient that has a really great story that comes from a village somewhere where something really special is happening, where they're reforesting, where they're rewildering, tell us about it. The supply chains of, I think I cover this in another point later, but there's been a massive shift in supply chains for 2 big reasons in the UK. One, of course, is Brexit, and the other one is COVID. It disrupted supply chains. Now, I deal with a lot of people who have to deal with shipping. The ships aren't leaving. Getting your stock on a ship is a privilege these days. So I've got one client who's just brought everything back to the UK. They're just not doing overseas at all anymore. So the good news about that is it's a less carbon footprint. So talk about that. Fashion, if there's anyone in fashion here, it's all about slow fashion, upcycling, recycling, retro, but again, sharing your supply and chain stories. What fabrics are you using if you're making from scratch? Who's making them? Tell us about, we used to talk about the women's co-op in India that made our breast pads. We tell the story about how that was changing the lives of them and their children. These are important stories. Customers feel connected to your story. With health, it's all naturopathy. Finally, it's not some weird alternative domain. You would have noticed in COVID, they're suddenly talking about vitamin D and rushing through the research, which has been happening for years, but finally saying, yeah, take vitamin D. And the combination of vitamin D, C, and zinc is amazing for your immunity. So if you're in a health business, how can you jump on that story? You've got these facts happening at a global level. You've got someone else has done the research for you. All you need to do is jump on it. So food as medicine, huge. If you're suffering as a gym because you can't operate anymore, what outdoor fitness can you do? Can you move to the idea of seasonal sports? Okay, can you create a program where you help people, and this is just a random idea I'm coming up with right now, but you could help people how to exercise best for each season. See that connection to nature, always bringing it back to nature, and then people feel like that's the right thing to do. They're feeling very connected. Skincare, it's all about green and clean. I do quite a lot of work in skincare because I've got some history in that. It's all plant botanicals, or organic ingredients, zero waste. DIY is getting huge. If you're in skincare, contact me. I can get you some reports to look at. They've done this because there's major companies that do these reports, about what trends are, and they do statistics. And there's been some crazy, ridiculous increase in just DIY skincare, for example. So again, running courses. People are wanting to do courses. People want to make it themselves. So you don't have to necessarily start a skincare company. You could start the education company about skincare. So travel and photography, travel, one of the biggest industries alongside hospitality with massive disruption. How can you all get together to support each other to create regional, localized experiences? This is the opportunity in the crisis for those businesses, unless you need to pivot completely. But there's opportunities there that they weren't done that well last year. We were in and out of tiers and lockdowns, and I don't know what's going to happen this year, but certainly in years to come, that trend will maintain. So get ready now. Who have you not picked up the phone to? Your favorite restaurants, your favorite hotels, your photographers, your service providers, in the same way that a wedding planner would have all these agencies that they'd utilize to have that one event. How can you do that in that agency style, working with other people? If you're in interior design, building architecture, biophilic design is the future. I'll show you some great diagrams in a moment. It's all about improving health and well-being of people. There is actually a great organization and it's all about the well-being economy. If you're interested in, what are they called? I'll think of it in a minute. I'm a member, I should know. But it's all about placing nature and health at the center of any business economy. And so these kind of community-based models of building and connecting people, no more can we just put up flats and leave them. That's the old way. So it's about collaborating with different people in the building industry and creating these biophilic designs. There's some really exciting ones happening, actually. I'll show you some photos in a moment. If you're in a service industry and you're thinking, well, I'm a solicitor, or I'm, a carpet cleaner, or you're just thinking, how can I, have a connection to the environment? You're perfectly placed to find yourself connecting with a charity who is connected to the environment. So whether it's someone really obvious like the Woodland Trust or Friends of the Earth, who have incredible funding and goals to actually rewild 30% of the UK in the next 10 years. Like, that's phenomenal. You might be able to get involved with your staff, getting involved with the local, because Woodland Trust has local elements, chapters. You might be able to get your staff involved. You might just not have the time and then just donate, but tell your customers you're donating. Every time you get a new client, maybe say, thanks for coming on board. By the way, I've joined you up to the Wildlife Trust. It can be from as little as £3 a month. It's incredibly affordable to do. And you can donate much bigger, of course. But just having a look at some of these organisations, and I would include in this mental health groups and physical health groups, like anything to do with health of humans and health of the planet. It's interconnected, because when we are well, our planet is well. When our planet is well, we are well. We are all connected. I'll tell you a huge kind of, again, it's been seen as a bit of a domain of hippiedom in the past, if you like. So you've got to imagine this alternative scene has been happening for 50, 60 years, right? All over Europe, Australia, America, everywhere. Asia. In fact, a lot of those people drawn to Asia, looking at how their communities and systems operate. But this is massive. Now, in America, they're calling it homesteading. Here, I think it'll be called self-sustaining. I don't know. There's no term yet. It'll be interesting to see what arises. Why don't you be the person to go out and create the term? But it's going to be all about the allotment and having your own beehives and collecting water for yourself and anything to do with home self-sufficiency. So I ask you, with your business you have now or a new business you might be dreaming of, what could you do? What could you package as a product or a service or a course? What training are these people going to need? And I mean, let me see if I can just get to some photos here for a moment. Yes, okay, these photos are just reflecting what I've been talking about, but this is where I wanted to go to. So what could you do to help these people? Because even people living in city flats, they're going to be looking for really trendy ways to have tomatoes on their balconies, to have herbs growing on the walls of their kitchen. How creative can you get? Can you get together with an interior designer? Maybe perhaps you are like a massively keen gardener on the weekend. Maybe you could ditch your existing business and get on this trend and turn your weekend hobby into your new business. People are going to need everything from the pots and the plants to knowing how to grow them. They're going to need courses. They're going to need training. They're going to want people to turn up at the house and to pay them a whack of money and say, just make it look like this. So what inspiring role could you play in this new industry? Because it is at the beginning of a huge, huge boom. I can tell you that for sure. Here's some beautiful examples of biophilic design. So I've got some really far out ones here too. These are just stunning, aren't they? So look, the people looking out to these offices are all feeling like they're in a little forest. It's extraordinary. It's also providing an environment where birds and bees in the city can come and be in a natural environment. So this is kind of an interior design example where you're using sort of natural materials of wood with some beautiful plants, focusing on the old cane furniture is coming back in. If there's any interior designers listening, you probably know this already, but that classic ugly, I would have thought, ugly 80s cane furniture with the cushions, that's coming back because it's all natural materials, cane, wood, bamboo, combined with greenery. This is the look. If you can have water there, it's ideal, even if it's just a water fountain. And here's more and more artistic expression as well. Here you can see how these people, well, you can't see the whole photo, but they're up quite high, but just on the roof garden rather than just having a pool, but actually surrounding it by greenery. And there's some really gorgeous stuff here, playing with swings and trees and trying to replicate this whole kind of forest look. And something as simple as having a wall, if you're just walking down the steps heading somewhere. What can you do as a company? Can you go and pitch this to your local council or to people's homes, to get this biophilic design bring in? So it's, and then there's going to be a whole bunch of you that can create services around that. Okay, they're still going to need their accounts done and the legal work done and all the compliancy done. So who can you connect with to get ahead of this industry? And then when you do, tell your customers about it. So if 95% of your customers are seemingly non-eco, what 5% could you highlight and have a real fun with? Or what new customers could you seek out to help them do better in the world? Just very quickly, this is an example of leadership where in the centre of Nottingham, they announced that they're going to be completely redesigning the centre. You might want to get involved in that if you're a business in that area. Look out, watch the news, jump online and look at what the government are doing, who got the grants in this, the £80 million fund that was announced at the end of last year. Who's getting that money? Get in touch, see what they're doing, see how you can get involved. There's opportunities being created from all these projects. And it's just going to make you feel good, let alone be good for business. So that's just some proactive regeneration you could do for yourself. Number 2, here's the mushrooms. So collaboration, when we talk about collaboration and adapting, pivoting, as people like to say, but really it's about adapting to your environment. It's actually based on a scientific principle that has been okay, let me see if I can say this rightly. Autopoiesis, that's my pronunciation. But these Chilean scientists who worked on this for a few decades, they basically showed that a cell, every living cell, okay, so everything that exists has gazillion cells in it, but each individual cell can completely self-regenerate in a healthy environment. And when you think about it, like, I mean, I fell over a couple of weeks ago. I had a fracture. They thought it was a fracture. I'm using my arm 2 weeks later because my cells have regenerated, okay? In a healthy body, and doing all the right exercises, taking the vitamins and as well as the painkillers, it was able to regenerate. You have an eye operation. Now an eye can regenerate within 3 days. Other parts of the body can take a whole year. And so every part of the body takes different, but that regeneration is going on. But they actually showed this process of how it's not centrally controlled. And this is what's so interesting for us as business people. So this hierarchical, mechanistic way of operating in the world with corporations and organizations, that there's so much change going on in organizations. If you're a small business, sort of 10 employees or more, and you're not into this exploring this living systems, regenerative organization stuff, definitely get in contact with me. It's where if you, so instead of centrally controlling it, it's how all the parts work together to create an energetic pathway and a recovery in a business. It's quite extraordinary. You still have leadership. So there's our cells. This is people working together, and this is just an example of this amazing root system. They just spread out, and they can hold an enormous trunk because so much time is spent absorbing nutrients and growing strong in the ground. Here's the nature's internet, mushrooms. It comes in many, many forms. But what they're realizing, the role that mushrooms have. So no matter how small you are, the role you have to play in a whole living system is extraordinary. So let's talk about some practical ways you can collaborate and adapt with people. So networking online, that's happened a lot in 2020, and it's continuing, and it's going to get bigger and better. It's going to get more sophisticated, and it's going to be more brand based. So really watch for that. So if you're involved in networking now, there's people even who have pivoted from offline events to online events. And so I'm getting on networking groups now where I'm seeing it actually being run by an event company. Fascinating. So that's been a fantastic way that they've collaborated with people to help businesses get online and keep functioning. So my question for you is, where can you find synergy? Who can you find synergy with? And where could you be proactive by making a phone call to say, hey, I think we could maybe collaborate and do something together for mutual benefit. When you're a sole trader in particular, it can be a bit lonely. So working with someone else without sharing business, but just sharing a client or sharing a project, how much fun could that be? And how much value and energy could that give, add to you? So going for that sort of agency style approach without being an agency. I'll use the wedding designer example again. All those companies that provide chairs, the laundry, the decorations, the floristry, they all come together for an event, but they're all invoicing separately and doing their own thing. But by working together, whether it's at a trade show or with a wedding planner or some kind of central connector, they're building an event together. So what can you do in your business, in food, in design, in building, in photography? Like there's always someone you can connect with. So have a think about that. And if you need help brainstorming that, that's again one of the things I do. So companies who did adapt well, I gave the takeaway example earlier. Now, can you imagine how that would have happened if people like Uber and Deliveroo didn't collaborate with the restaurants? And if social media and other digital communications, and I saw people using print media as well, by the way, as well as community Facebook groups became huge. If all those people didn't collaborate and connect, that line of supply would not have been possible. And the people who it was particularly successful for were the people who talked about it. They didn't just do it. We're connecting with this person. We're going to give a meal for every time 10 people order, we're going to do a box for someone in need and we're going to give it away. Telling your story about how you were using these new supply chains that just came together overnight. Some of them were already in place, of course, but it was quite phenomenal to watch, people adapting. I remember even stories down in Cornwall of like suddenly not being able to send fish off over to Europe before Brexit, just getting out on the dock and just going the old-fashioned way, and people queuing up 2 meters apart to buy fresh local fish, which hadn't been done for decades from what I could tell. So, bottle shops who started drive-through services, really innovative stuff, payment systems that just went into place overnight. It just shows you that we could do amazing things when we have to. And the thing is to tell the story. So really niche your message. So for example, where's the farm that one of your ingredients is coming from? If you're in any kind of product industry, you have an ingredient, and that ingredient comes from a supply chain that has a story. So how can you maybe reach out to those people and maybe use the kind of blockchain approach where you are actually going more direct? Because that happened a lot because your retailers weren't always there. You can sell direct online. People were using new selling platforms for the first time. You sort of eBays, your Amazons, and your what's that wonderful? Forgot the name of that fantastic other platform that's huge. And people selling direct themselves and creating mailing lists and just getting online and saying, I'm struggling, I need business. Now, can you imagine in 2019, if you got on social media and said, I'm struggling, I need business, people would go, your fault. Wouldn't they? They'd blame you. Oh, well, do some more marketing, have a better product, have a better service. But 2020 was this incredible permission to just go, I'm struggling, I need some work. You had people being honest for the first time and connecting and having conversations with each other going, let's help each other out. Well, guess what? That's not going to change. That's going to stay. That's going to get more formalized and branded. So what can you do and who are you hooking up with to do that? And that's kind of formal referral and rewards process is going to get stronger and stronger. So yeah, what connections can you make? Just some stats. If you need, you can look this stuff up yourself, but if you want to have any of the reports, I can certainly, some of these you have to buy. But there was this, they noticed that people who already had a cross-channel platform in place were the ones who survived quicker than others early in the pandemic. Others quickly got some digital platforms and so they could start talking to people. But the increase in loyalty, that was the phenomenal outcome of this whole collaboration and adaptation process. People got really, really loyal. So you had this, I've just been trying to find it online. I can't find the name of the town, but there was this great story of a hardware store, a small hardware store that had been around for, decades. Everyone knew it, but, as the big Home Depot type style, what do you call them in this country, they came on, but people were shopping there instead. And so then the stories coming out, he may have to close. Well, of course, everyone just decided to go there for their tools instead. I mean, everyone was at home doing, using lockdown to do some home-based projects. And so they went there. And then, of course, they remembered what a quicker experience, what a nicer small town experience that was. And that watching that business turn around, because he was just one of those guys that just had everything you'd want. None of this kind of fixed stuff in packaging that you get at the big guys. So that sense of loyalty and community was so the word I want you to know, I think I show it in the next slide, maybe we'll see, is called Glocal, Glocal. And it's about thinking globally with some of the big ideas I'm presenting here, but acting locally. What can you do in your local and regional and national setting? Because we're going to move away from this global stuff and get back to national and local. It's amazing. So get across this opportunity, especially if you're relying on overseas clients. It's fine if they're on digital, like I have clients in different countries, and that's fine because we're on Zoom. I'm not talking about that kind of business ending. I'm talking about where supply chains are affected. So as I showed in the previous slide, nature and science is on your side. So this is not just made up stuff. This is for real, okay? Which brings us beautifully to purpose-led businesses. And I've just used this example. These guys sold out, like a lot of purpose-led businesses, they just sold out. Like the Who Gives a Crap toilet paper, they sold out in the first week, and you all remember why. These guys, they only do British grown produce, Hodmedods, amazing. And this is the farm I showed you earlier, Wakelands, who provide, they're connected. So, these guys, they have a relationship that's very, very different to the big distributors where they visit each other's farms and they help package it together, and it's quite extraordinary. So, and then they tell the story. Actually, I think they could tell it a lot better than they do, but So yeah, looking at what connections you can make with your purpose-led business and talk about it, because you're probably doing something now that's amazing. You're just not telling everyone. And it's, gone are the days where you just put the certificate on the wall that you've helped the local school. How can you amplify that? So this is all about the next 10 years. CSR is corporate social responsibility, by the way, if anyone's wondering. That's happening at the big corporate level. There's a lot of funding going into sustainability. It's a massive, there's so many jobs going now just for sustainability officers. It's a whole new field. If you're a technically based person, you'd enjoy that. But what's your story? Tell your story. Who do you help? What problem are you solving for them, and how are you doing that? What have you already got in place that is now currently the trend that you can just amplify and build on? Just tell us about who you impact. Talk about mental health. Talk about your charitable works, and just get involved, or talk about how you're already involved. But a purpose-led business is someone who puts social impact and sustainability at the forefront of what they do. So one of all businesses I've done has been in that. So I talked about the organic baby business. So, when no one knew what the word organic meant, I remember everyone used to say to us, but isn't cotton organic? They didn't understand. We'd have to go, no, there's like up to 23 pesticides in every t-shirt if it's not organic. There's kids in farms in India playing in drums of chemicals and getting really ill, and the farmers are getting ill. So we need to actually talk to the farmers who aren't using these chemicals and fund them. And of course, now the organic farming movement in India is huge 20 years later. But it came from people like us in the West going, this is what we want. It's like, oh, yeah, we can do that. So it's a labor-intensive farming, cotton. So it was affordable in India, and we put fair trade restrictions on it to make sure people were paid properly, and worked good hours, and then told that story. So that's a purpose-led business, is when you put the welfare and the health of the people in the entire supply chain, as well as your customers, ahead of everything else you do. And guess what? It's big business. There's a lot of money in it. So it's also profitable. This is not just about doing good and feeling good. All these things are profitable that I'm sharing with you. Number 4, technology. We're going to see a massive leap in the sort of at the more corporate level of augmented reality as well as virtual reality. So augmented reality, for example, you'll be able to go online and perhaps using its augmented reality is when you use actual objects that exist now and put them in a computer-based environment. So it could be your face to see how a certain makeup color would look on you. It's already done with hairstyles. It's a bit clunky how they're doing it at the moment, but that's going to become more sophisticated. Interfaces will start to look like what you're seeing in sci-fi. So this is, it could be 10 years ahead right now, but that's where it's going. But technology is also part of renewable energy, massive boom in ethical renewable energy. So, what service could your business provide to that sector, or could you just ditch what you're doing now and get involved in new trends? That's going to be the reality for some of you. But yeah, technology is not just about working online. It's getting really, really good at it. We're going to see companies actually supporting, because working at home is going to stay. It's going to become these very flexible environments, and we're going to see, especially the big corporates who can afford it, actually funding their employees to have really good home offices, good chairs, because they've still got all their HR obligations. So we're going to see that changing. Technology is also the obvious stuff around engaging with social platforms. There's going to be new platforms. They're already starting. You've got to work out which platforms are relevant for you and your customers. And we're going to see this niching. So it's a global idea, but the reality of how it's going to look is that you're going to be really niched in certain sectors with your clients. And then people are going to jump platforms. And that's very, very different to what we have now, which is like everyone on Facebook or everyone on Instagram, or you choosing 2 or 3 platforms, and most people are on it, and everyone's on LinkedIn. It's going to be much more niching with more social platforms coming on board. So really looking at the ones that are relevant for you is super, super important. Technology was a big topic, so I have kept a little bit general, but I hope you get the idea there. But yeah, like it's technology is in everything. It's in lighting, it's in the motor industry, it's in photography, it's in air purification systems, vital right now, oh my gosh, and building design, which we looked at earlier. So what role will technology play in your business? And not dismissing that because it's in the too hard basket. Okay, because this stuff's going to filter down to small businesses. Even though the corporate sector will lead these technology booms, as they always have, it's going to filter down to you. So thinking now, how can I get ahead of that? How can I be a part of that story, even if it's just talking about it for now? Okay, supply chains, very close to my heart. We've kind of touched on this quite a lot already, so we probably didn't need to go over this too much. But, you know, really connecting to the people behind your logistics company. Okay, maybe reaching out to your customers and bringing customer stories into it. So this more circular idea where you're all connected together. Remember the beautiful idea of the cell regenerating. So you're all helping each other grow. But this is the big story of 2020 is having a story, talking about it and not hiding it anymore. It's got to be part of your marketing if it's not already. If you're not telling a story, you really are going to be left behind, because that is the way people are connecting. So you may remember, or you may be a parent now that tells your kids stories at night, but you'll also remember being a child being told a story, and how a story is the easiest way to get into someone's imagination in a sense of creativity and thinking out of the box and being inspired and being engaged. It's all about the story every single time. I work with professional storytellers in business as well. Amazing. So local, there's that word I talked about before. So you like that localized buying and manufacturing after this huge disruption in supply chain. And again, there's a story to tell around Brexit, around if that's affected you. Tell your story. Tell why you're going local. Tell about the person in your village that you're now supplying from. And what's new? Just replace how you, if you're going to create a new model of business, tell the story, take people on the journey with you, tell them what you're doing, tell them to anticipate something different, ask their point of view. Blockchain, that probably belonged in the previous slide of technology, but that's just huge. There's free courses right now. You can go online and learn coding, and you can pay as well, but there's free courses on blockchain technology, reskilling yourself into this stuff. The farm to plate, that's a term we're familiar with. Giving the story of, you know, who you're working with directly from the farm into the restaurant or into the home, or creating home packs, how you can go from the farm to a DIY home cooked pack. Okay, there's big companies doing sort of just like, you know, delivering recipes and food, but what's the story there? Perhaps you can get together with local farmers and create your own localized box. I mean, extraordinary, and just tap into the whole less carbon footprint. But there's no trade shows last year. There'll be no trade shows this year. I'd be very surprised if there's some. And trade shows traditionally, and this is happening with a lot of product-based businesses I'm working with, where traditionally we would create the product with a supply chain backing that up, and then we'd go to market maybe at a trade show or direct to a wholesaler, first via a distributor, and then hit the shelves, and there'd be a whole bunch of load of costs about getting onto the shelves, and there's so many pieces in the pie, it's just crazy. So it's already been trending in the last 5-10 years, people going direct online and just bypassing all of that and focusing on building a tribe through social media, selling direct, which is more profit for you and more fun for everyone involved. And people love that idea of buying direct from someone. So that's going to continue. Okay, so if you've been relying on traditional distribution, what conversations are you having with those distributors? Are they just not buying? Are you just losing business, or you got increased business because they're online? Just looking at your supply chain and what isn't working, and stick with it if it's working. Get involved and make it even better. And if it's not working, if you haven't already started re-looking at your model, it's time now. Loyalty, we talked about this earlier, and this is just going to be huge for small companies. So looking at training your staff to keep them in your organization, and what would keep them there, and, you know, what are their interests and their passions, and how can you support them to get better at their job, whether it's not just offering more money, but, you know, more responsibility, or helping them with a career track. That sort of, it's been a trend for, I don't know, sort of at least 15 years, where this idea of people of a certain age group, under 30, you know, sort of have no loyalty, and they're sort of moving through companies on this sort of fast track, and companies are coping with this loyalty issue. That's all shifting, and it's going to be all about the leadership that's being provided. So providing education and setting the standard in your industry, and then telling the story about what you're doing. Tell people what you're doing. Don't just keep it happening behind the scenes, and ask for help. 2020 just gave us all permission to ask for help. And that's going to continue in business, is being real, showing up, telling people when you're struggling, telling people what you need, and getting the help to change. So knowledge. This is just massive. I mean, I thought this industry was huge already. It's going to get even bigger. What do you do now that you could teach someone? Now, it could be a hobby, or it could be in your actual industry that you're an expert by the fact that you've been doing it for 30 or 40 years. What could you do? Could you turn your business into just knowledge creation, or could you make that an additional revenue stream? Coaching and mentoring is huge. We're seeing that boom where people are willing to ask for help and they're wanting help restructuring this. One of the things I do help people with is creating online courses. We have a program called 33 Days to Go Digital, and it's for people who need to pivot really fast because they just don't have the time and resources to luxuriate over a year to reinvent something, which some of my clients do have that luxury of, which is amazing. But if you need to change fast, we have a course called 33 Days to Go Digital, and that's where we just completely look at your business image, reinvent your message and your visual branding, and pivot on a new digital platform, and it's phenomenal. Speak to me about that one if you're in that boat. And even, it doesn't just have to be because you can't afford a year. It could be that you just want to change fast because you've got this really exciting idea and you want to get it up quick. Would love to hear from you if that's the case. But this new knowledge as well. So I always like to say that woo-woo is the new black. We can now suddenly talk about healing and aromatherapy and acupuncture and all these things that were maybe considered a little bit alternative. They're coming into the mainstream. It's incredible. So if you're in that field or you want to know about that field, it's like you no longer have to feel a bit kooky. How can you collaborate with people like that? You know, how relevant might that be for something you already offer, especially in the field of mental health and physical health? And there's many industries with physical and mental health. And sometimes it's just time, you know, sort of once you're over 50, over 60, it's time to think about what your legacy is in business. And so sharing that knowledge can be an amazing way, whether that's making a short film to share with people, and including your own company, writing a manual that people will use for a long time, writing a book, telling your story, writing a book because you have skills and knowledge to share about your industry. And just generally in your community, what your legacy is. It's just a natural time of life to be thinking about that. Not from an egocentric point of view, but from just a human point of view. It's such a natural time in life to sort of just wisdom's kicking in and things just don't bother you anymore. It's blissful, isn't it? And just thinking about, wow, okay, I'm in the last half of my life. What impact do I want to leave on my family and the world? And of course, Brexit, we have to mention it. And, you know, some of you will have a real story about how it's helping or affecting. You've got to tell the story. Don't try and pretend you're okay. Isn't it great? We don't have to pretend we're okay anymore. 2020, thank you for that permission. Okay. And finally, it sort of all comes together for me around leadership. So, and remember the images earlier we had around living systems and regenerative organisations, where that leadership doesn't have to be this linear top-down approach where you're starting to tell everyone what to do. There's, this is how I particularly like to work in a much more innovative way. It's just looking at how, starting with the leader for sure, because you're the visionary, but then how we might involve the organisation in that change, which will increase the loyalty as well as the profitability. So this is where a space that I work a lot in. So like I mentioned earlier, you know, in terms HR is going to be starting to look after people at home more and more physically, as well as with compliance, coaching and mentoring for leaders and teams, sole traders. There's many of you out there that have never even thought to get a mentor or a coach, and this is probably a time where people for the first time are thinking, yeah, maybe I need to have a conversation. But what is that mentoring and coaching thing? How does it work? I'm going to offer you some free time with me at the end of this presentation, so hang in there, we're nearly finished. And reinvention, oh my God, I say it again, I've said it a few times. Permission granted. Fail, get help, ask for help, reinvent yourself, close what you're doing, start something new. It's like the entire universe is supporting you into something new right now. Embrace it, take advantage of it. But if you're loving what you're doing, then let's just expand that and make it even better. and just engage help for yourself and your teams. Okay, so we're just about at the end now. So I'll leave you with this idea. Great quote from James Joyce. That I am tomorrow or some future day what I established today. And I am today what I established yesterday or some previous day. It's so simple, isn't it? I always tell my kids, life's just a mathematical equation. The past plus the past plus the past equals the present. You are at where you are now because of everything you've done before now. Okay? Now you can be happy about that. You can have regrets about that, whatever. But the fact is that right now, today, that's what's in your control, that you can make a choice to change something. So being honest about that and getting excited about that and getting the help. Stop trying to do it alone. It's just nuts trying to do it alone. Change happens with support and accountability. It's very simple. Even if it's just calling a friend. Okay, so who am I? Just a quick summary. Eco business pioneer since 1998. Started and sold 4 companies. Made a hell of a lot of mistakes, as well as enjoyed some terrific awards and successes. And my mistakes and failures have informed me and made me more brilliant for having them. So I'm here to share my knowledge with you. If you're into physical products, I've launched 33 into the world myself, and ethical supply chains is my comfortable space. But I'm more than that. I'm a nature walker. You see me out walking every day. I'm a tree lover. I learn so much from nature. I'm a writer, an advocate for regenerative mental and physical well-being. I'm a healer. You have to ask me about that another time. A mother, a grandmother. GG stands for great grandmother. There's a long story to that. Thank you for thinking I don't look old enough for that. And a historian. I am many, many things. Here's some of my success stories. I don't know that these links work, but you can take a screenshot. These are some of the people who in the 33 days program. So these people are designing their own websites who never thought in the world they'd build their own website. But we show you how to do that. And these are some of my bigger clients that are, more in the last couple of years that have beautiful, beautiful brands that we were able to spend the time on the design and the graphics and the content. So do have a look at these. Yeah, there's only a few, by the way, because I've only been mentoring for a few years, but very, very proud of these people. Some of these businesses are, have a look at this one. Amazing. We spent 5 years building that one. So it's all about, this is all the kind of expertise I have over many years of applying it. So anything you see there, I'd probably summarize myself as being inspirational and brilliant at marketing, and a fantastic just friend and deep listener to help you really know your purpose and your vision and to create a plan to make it happen. That's pretty much what I do. The big experience, if you're wondering, is a monthly mentoring program I have. So if you like that group environment, and it's very, very affordable as well. The B stands for business, beautiful, brave, bold, all sorts of things. Be the change. These are some of the things we look at in the B experience, because this is what business is. But we do it with everything I've mentioned today in mind. Okay, so it's not your average style of working, more innovative, global thinking with a local focus. So all the stuff, I've raised money lots of times, I've sold businesses, I've done pretty much whatever's in business, I've done it, I think. Okay, so here are the 3 ways I work. A personal one-to-one service, which is a great privilege. The B experience, which is a monthly mentoring group, and short courses. At the moment, 33 days to go digital, but no doubt I'll be creating more in the future. The Phoenix is my symbol because I believe everyone can rise from the ashes. And I know that 2020, you were given permission to be the most honest and brave that you could ever be in this world, and it's time. And this trend will just continue all the way through this decade, because everyone knows 2030 is coming. Everyone knows to different extents that we all have a part to play in the healing of our communities and our planet. And that's what interests me and is my greatest passion. This is how you can find me. If you're in the UK, there's my number for WhatsApp or texting or phoning. That's my email. This website is just something I whipped up. So there'll probably be a new website in the future. So if you're seeing this recording in the future, do have a look. in case there's a link directing you to a new, more professional website. This is how you book your one-to-one session with me. You can jump on right now. And I said I'd give you an offer. So I do want to offer sort of 30, 45 minutes. We'll see how it goes. To completely free. If you are a member of a networking group that is watching this, I'd just love you to experience what mentoring might be like. So we will talk about your business. I want to know your story. And I can guarantee you that something inspirational and pivotal will happen just in that one discussion to give you a taste of what's possible. So I think that's it. Thanks for having me. I think we went a bit longer than expected. But that's Regenerative Business Mentoring. I'm Janine Barron. The Earth is my #1 client, and I'm here to